Hello and welcome to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. It's just delightful to be with you all. In our household, we're digging deep into the closet and pulling out all the long underwear and long shirts and long pants, you know, to face this absolutely brutal 60-degree winter that we're all facing.
It's only one day of 61, and then
I know, but it's just like
to 90 again.
I need a fur coat or something to get through the day. So today, our speaker is Dr. Matthew Heinz. Matt, how are you doing today? Hey. And I'll introduce you in just a moment. We do have a couple of quick announcements. I want to call your attention to the National Coke Busters Day. It's this coming Wednesday, October 28th. It starts at 4 o'clock. It's your chance to poke the Cokes and get out the vote and get people to vote yes on 208. It's going to assemble on the south side of Speedway, and there's also a webinar about it. And if you want more details, just go to the Democrats of Greater Tucson site. We have all the information about the in-person protest, as well as the webinar, which is called the State Capture webinar. And we have a couple of announcements from people seeking higher office. Lucy Messing, why don't you unmute yourself?
Thank you, Larry. I am Lucy Messing, and I am the current vice chair of the Pima County Dems, and I'm excited today to announce that I am running for the chair of Pima Dems. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Everyone knows I am a public education activist. That is my passion. And I was raised in Phoenix, came to Tucson to go to the U of A and stayed here. And I have been politically active for over 45 years. So what I would like to do is just let you know where I'm going as far as my thoughts for being the chair. First of all, I would like to reach out to all the LDs, the caucuses and the clubs, kind of go on a listening tour, find out what their thoughts are, what worked, what didn't, any suggestions, all ideas, and hear from you. I hope to add 100 PCs to our PC count. There's a lot of empty spaces. Also, redistricting. Redistricting is going to be paramount in next year. And we need to organize around that. We need to have as many Democrats as possible. When we went through redistricting the last time, I attended several meetings and I did testify at one, but we're going to need all hands on deck for that. Also, I have a great team of individuals who are working on the campaign throughout the entire Pima County, from all LDs, members that are looking forward to the reorg meeting in on January 9th. I have been endorsed by Rex Scott, our future county supervisor, in addition to former Mayor Rothschild and Congressman Grijalva. So I look forward to meeting with you all virtually and hearing from you, and I am willing, ready, and able to serve as the next party leader. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Lucy. And now we have an announcement from Bonnie Heidler. Bonnie, please unmute yourself and make your announcement.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Heidler. I'm chair of LD10 Democrats. Some of you know me. And I want to thank you, Larry, and DGT for letting me speak to you for a few minutes. I, too, am here to announce that I'm running for Pima Democratic Party chair. As chair of LD10 for 2.5 years, I created a dynamic team. Then we elected Democrats up and down the ballot, as well as taking back a seat that we had lost from a Republican. So I think some of my experience at the LD level will be invaluable as a PCDP chair. Also, for the last 2 years, I have been working closely with PCDP Chair Allison Jones as chair of the Pima LD chairs. I formed and led this group so that LD chairs can discuss issues and challenges we face and coordinate our efforts. Allison has said that those meetings are where the bulk of the party business happened. It was instrumental in making some systemic changes in the relationship between LDs and PCDP. Money no longer flows from the LDs to PCDP. It flows from PCDP to the LDs, which is what I always thought it should do. PCDP's role is simple, and that's how I looked at it: support the LDs, financially and otherwise. This supportive relationship will be very important during redistricting. As PCDP chair, I will be committed to providing cohesion and support to the LDs throughout the challenges that are part of redistricting. There are other systemic changes that occurred. The volunteers at headquarters were reorganized and trained. PCDP's relationship with organized labor was repaired. Proper financial accounting procedures were implemented. We built a platform that we will continue to build upon. Finally, during the past 2 years, record amounts of money were raised. My platform includes goals to not only protect the progress that has occurred in the past 2 years, but build upon that progress. I am proud to say that Allison is endorsing me for PCDP chair, and she is eager to assist me continuing the fundraising success that PCDP has had under her leadership. More about my platform and what I plan to do will occur, but we are right in the middle of during the most important election in our history that's happening on November 3rd, and my campaign will not officially start until November 4th. But from now until November 4th, I will be building a team throughout the county to assist with my campaign. I look forward to telling you more about my vision for PCDP in November. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email at bonnie4pimadems@gmail.com, and I can put it in the chat. And thank you for giving me the time, Larry.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Well, let's get started with our program. Today with us, we have Dr. Matthew Heinz. He is running for the Pima County Board of Supervisors to represent District 2. Matt is an internist and hospitalist at Tucson Medical Center. He's pursuing a platform of a healthy community, healthy families, a healthy economy, and a healthy environment. He was elected to the Arizona State House in 2008, and he served 2 terms. And then in 2013, he was appointed by President Obama to help implement the Affordable Care Act. And he did this for 2 years as the Director of Provider Outreach for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. President Obama also asked him to assist in the domestic response to the Ebola pandemic in 2014. Matt ran for Congress in CD2 in 2012, 2016, and 2028, but was not elected. So he is now running for supervisor against Republican Anthony Sizer in District 2, which covers southern Tucson all the way down to Sahuarita. And with that, Matt, tell us what you're going to do when you're elected to office.
Well, thank you, Larry. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to hear some questions and answer those, and to just hear how things are going, and to share a little bit about my campaign. And you did a great job. I appreciate the introduction, so I'm not going to spend too much time on my bio. I think you did a really great job there. Other than to say that I did move down to Southern Arizona over 17 years ago now to finish my medical training at the U of A. So that's how I originally came to Tucson. So, and I of course made it my home here, and I really do love our community and Southern Arizona. So, and during my training is kind of how I got involved from healthcare. It's kind of a strange jump into the political world, but I saw a lot of my patients and the community really not being served the way they needed to be by our healthcare system that with so many people without insurance and prescription drug prices, just out of control prices for things that people couldn't afford, and people getting denied care or delayed care. And that's really what pushed me to get involved and to run for the legislature way back in 2006 and 2008, and then the rest I think you heard enough about. I do think that my background, just having that background with some knowledge of how the state legislature works or sometimes doesn't work, and also the couple of years I spent working mostly in Washington, D.C. To help implement the Affordable Care Act, showed me a lot about certainly how the federal government should be responding in a pandemic. And that is not something that we're seeing right now. And that is actually the thing that was the most impactful for me and what prompted me to become involved during this cycle. And it made just so much sense to me to look at the county level, where we have, of course, that's where our public health department is, and that's where I felt that my background at this time, given my work here at Tucson Medical Center as a hospital physician, and my previous experience in the administration as a legislator, I felt that it made a lot of sense to be able to have that background inform how we respond as a community to the pandemic, especially in light of the fact that we are not getting adequate responses or investment from our governor here in Arizona. No surprise, unfortunately, and certainly not from this Trump administration. And even the CDC has been tripped up with the way this has been overly politicized in terms of the pandemic response. And they were issuing politically incorrect, frankly, politically altered recommendations that the Trump administration appointees were adjusting. And that's just completely inappropriate. So in observing all of these things, that's what really prompted me to get involved. And we had a great result on August 4th. So now as the nominee, looking forward to the general election in just about a week. Feeling pretty good about where we are here. And we've seen just absolute record numbers of turnout so far. Of the just over 100,000 registered voters in District 2 in Pima County, we've seen almost 43,000 have already voted early in some form, which is amazing, it's really, really great. And while the district is more Democratic leaning, that's great. The reason it's so important to really push, and what I'm doing a lot with the resources that I'm bringing to this campaign, we're working to get those who are more sporadic voters, probably Democratic leaning voters that almost never vote, or that vote every 1 or 2 general elections, but never midterms and that kind of thing. We're working really hard to make sure that we turn out a lot of those voters, so we can run up the count here in Pima County, especially important in District 2 where I'm running, and also in District 5, because if we run up tens of thousands of margin for Democrats in Pima County, that is where I think we can make sure to turn our state blue for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and of course for Senator Mark Kelly and all of our corporation commission candidates. So on the campaign side, that's what I'm focusing a lot on right now, and also highlighting some of my differences with my opponent, who in a recent forum talked about not really believing that masks should be required during a pandemic with a respiratory virus that we don't have a cure or a vaccine for. And that doesn't make any sense to me, and I think it's really unsafe. So there's a lot of places where my opponents and I differ, and I think that the voters are going to speak very clearly on that pretty soon here. But the most important thing, I believe, is to, of course, if elected, if voted in here by the voters, then I will be working diligently to address the pandemic, because it just hasn't been addressed at those other levels in any significant way. And so we're at the county level left to do a lot of that for ourselves and for our community. So I'll be working to inform that process and help navigate the response going forward. And also we're going to need to be distributing a vaccine at some point. Once the FDA has approved a vaccine, and only at the time when it is clearly safe, not before. we'll need to be able to have the infrastructure in place to distribute that on a priority basis, as we've heard from Dr. Fauci and others, those who are in healthcare, those who are more vulnerable, or caring for those who are more vulnerable in the home, and so on and so forth. So, but we can't forget the fact that so many, just tens of thousands of people, of families here in Southern Arizona, many in my district, are suffering economically as a result of the pandemic, and the fact that so many are out of work, and the fact that this administration would rather rush through a Supreme Court justice who is, in my estimation, seems like a very nice person that is completely out of step from a jurisprudential standpoint with this country and where we are now in the direction that we're going. But it's more important for this administration, as we've seen, to ram through this confirmation during an active election cycle, which is beyond hypocritical after what they did to President Obama and Merrick Garland. But they would rather do this than actually focus on getting much needed assistance in terms of monetary assistance so that people can put food on the table when they can't work due to safety concerns from this virus. And so it's really, really important that we actually pay attention to the needs of the people, and that we focus on what they need us to focus on. And so other than, of course, addressing the viral pandemic, we need to address the economic impact and getting people to a point where they can get back into the workforce. And there's going to be some of these jobs that aren't going to come back, and helping through Job Path and through the training that we can provide through county resources, helping folks readjust, re-educate, and figure out where they can fit in the new economy that's going to be the post-pandemic economy moving forward. Fortunately, in Southern Arizona, we have, through what we can do through alternative energy generation, our green economic potential here, we have a lot of options and opportunities for folks, and we will going forward. But we need to make sure that people get the attention and the assistance they need from the federal and state governments, and that gets distributed properly right away. And then we, of course, need to work on long-term economically, making Pima County more of an economic engine to create those good paying jobs that will stay right here in Southern Arizona, something that I think we can do with regard to looking at alternative energy especially. And lastly, I think it's important to do all of these things with the respect for our environment. I think part of it, looking at the way we can develop our economy, we can do so in a way that harnesses solar energy, that helps to preserve our water, because obviously that is a major resource. And we can have an impact on water policy right here at the county level. So, and I plan on looking at all of these things, and being, of course, having an open door to everybody. With that, I would like to just thank you all for everything that you're doing, because this, and I suppose I should thank, in a way, President Trump, because I don't know that our turnout would be quite as robust without him. But I know that what everybody is doing here on this call, and what they have been doing for the past weeks and months in terms of registering voters and talking to people about the importance of having their voices heard, getting their votes in early, so far, it's working pretty well. And statewide in Arizona, I was just on a team update call with my campaign a little bit before this call, and we're still at over, I think it's 117,000 more Democratic early votes are in compared to Republican. And I don't want anyone to think that that means that we're definitely winning this thing. I think we have the potential to do it. What I'm saying is, if we keep doing what we're doing, it's going to be very difficult for Republicans to make up all of the ground, all of that progress, we're banking so many votes. And by the way, a lot of those Republicans, at least some Republicans, are probably quietly not going to vote for Donald Trump. And certainly a lot of those independents are definitely not going to be voting for Donald Trump. So we're racking up a significant, I believe right now, a significant surplus of Democratic votes statewide. And I think we can keep hold of that if we can keep the pressure on and keep people getting out there to the polls and reinforcing how important it is to get people to drop off their ballots or send them in right away. So thank you all for the work you're doing in that regard. And I will stop talking at you and say that I'd love to take questions from folks for 10 or 15 minutes if you have them, and I will do my best to answer as succinctly as possible.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. Really appreciate that. The floor is open for questions. And I see, Christina, you have a question, but I wanted to get to this one first, which is that here it is on the front page of the local paper. The Trump administration has confessed that they're really not doing anything to control the pandemic. So my question to you, Matt, is what can the county do to fill the gap?
Yeah, and to some degree they've been doing it. That is just a travesty. I cannot believe some of the stuff we're hearing and reading. But under President Obama, when I was there for a couple of years in HHS, during the several months I was helping with the Ebola response, we worked to make sure that the virus didn't get to this continent. Basically, they deployed global health team, which has been largely either like hobbled or it's just gone. They were not taking this thing seriously, and so from the very get-go, it was pretty much left to the states, or in our case to the county level, to do things, even to the point of finding, having our health department try to procure additional ventilators when it was looking like we were going to run out of ICU space and ventilators in our hospitals, or PPE and N95 masks for our staff at our nursing homes and our hospitals. And so there are so many different roles that the county has sort of suddenly already been sort of like tasked with, that they really weren't necessarily anticipating having to do with almost no help. I mean, and the CARES Act did provide for some funding. That money's about to run out. We're weeks away from those funds running out completely. So it's already run out for, in terms of support to individual families, as we know. But because you have the county health department, that is really where a lot of this, in terms of, for example, if people are not obeying the masking regulations, and then there can be fines issued, and that can be enforced. The enforcement arm it's not the sheriff's department. It's not going to be TPD, most likely. It's going to be the health department issuing citations if they're allowed to do so. So that is something so there's truly a lot that we can do at the county level to address this pandemic and to really help navigate moving forward, because we also just need a stable, consistent voice for what the best thing to be doing is or isn't. And should people be traveling? Should people be flying? The answer is generally I would avoid that at this time. But what about hiking? Is that okay? That's probably fine. But what exact can we have?
Whoops.
What happened?
That's really strange. Did you mean to mute me? I can stop if you want. But anyhow, so we have the county has a pretty big role to play going forward. Was there another question for me?
We have a question from Steve and Christina Early. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for being here, and I'm a longtime fan of you. I've met you long ago. Anyway, my question it's following up Larry. The county passed a mandatory mask, but they didn't put any teeth in it. There's no penalty, and nobody's enforcing it. I mean, you drive the city's doing pretty good, but you go out into the county, and you might as well just be in cowboy land.
That's fair. That's a great question, which I got. Let me make sure I'm unmuted here. Okay. So I actually believe that it makes sense to empower. There was actually a version of the Pima County regulation before it was passed. There was a version that had specifically the health department as able to issue citations, whether it's to maybe not on the first sort of offense, but repeat non-masking offenders or businesses that were not putting up signs or encouraging people not to wear masks or didn't have any enforcement there, that they would get warnings, and then the health department could actually issue citations, fines, and even close in some cases of non-compliant businesses in the county. Say, look, you are not safe to stay open if you keep having people gather here without enforcing any masks or out of compliance with these rules. That absolutely is necessary. And so people have had enough time to adjust to the mask situation. We heard Dr. Fauci, who initially said, maybe we don't need to have, necessarily a mask requirement nationwide, because he's thinking people will just look to see how serious this is and they'll actually want to do this. Instead, we're going to actually have to probably at the federal and state level, as well as the county level, put in requirements. The people actually wear these things, and that if they don't, there's going to be some kind of monetary penalty or some other penalty. I don't think we need to be putting people in prison, because there's a potential risk for getting COVID there. But for sure, I think we need to empower the health department to make those determinations and to issue citations where necessary.
All right. We have a question from Carolyn Klassen. Please unmute yourself and ask away.
Hi, Matt. Carolyn Klassen, Blog for Arizona. You pulled off a stunning upset of the incumbent supervisor in August. And I guess we just want to ask you, how did you do it?
Oh, okay, sure. So, I actually have to say, like, I'm friends with Ramon, and I've been friends with Ramon for quite some time. And this campaign was completely health and welfare and wellness, and then of course kind of urgency of the pandemic based. It was never in any way an anti-incumbent campaign. It wasn't. There was no, like, I had no qualms whatsoever with Ramon or his policies or his votes, anything to that effect. I just felt so strongly about getting the medical background on the board going forward, looking at and seeing that this was going to go for probably, unfortunately, years, not even just months, in terms of the pandemic response and the role that the county would require. I think just the district has not. I think part of it is just given the context that we're all operating in, being in that pandemic. I think that my background as a hospital physician, that was just probably it made sense to a lot of voters in terms of timing. So I think that's possibly part of it. And I think that also in District 2, there hasn't been, just because it's been pretty stable for the past number of cycles. It's been pretty stable in terms of the political leadership. So maybe just having robust campaigning and some different options and it's also changed. The district has changed quite a bit over the last decade and a half or so. And so I think that kind of a combination of just timing and a campaign for the primary that they hadn't seen before.
All right. We have a question from Bill Rowe. Sorry, Bill Rowe. Bill, please unmute yourself and ask away. Hello, Bill. Kindly unmute yourself. Well, while we're waiting for Bill, let me turn to the next person in line. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Bill.
I couldn't make the direction respond. I have sort of one real simple question, another one a little more complex. When will the new Board of Supervisors take effect? And then more longer term, how do you think that new board is going to look, and what is it going to be interested in doing?
Great questions, both. I actually don't know if I can answer the first one. I believe the first week of January is when the board is sworn. All the board members are sworn in, but I don't know a specific date. So top of January for sure. I guess I'm focusing mostly on the primary and the general, and not as much the swearing in part. So I'll confirm that. But top of January, and then with regard to how the board will look, I mean, honestly, looking at some of these numbers, and again, not to be like irrationally exuberant or anything, I'm hopeful that we have a 5-member Democratic board. Now, I know that sounds like a little pie in the sky, but the numbers coming out of District 4, where we have Steve Diamond competing with Steve Christie, they're both named Steve. That's kind of fun. And Steve Diamond, like Diamond is, Don Diamond, Diamond. I mean, there's just a lot of potential for some confusion there in a helpful way, I think, for Democrats. And, Steve Diamond is really making an aggressive push here, especially during these last few weeks. And that's really important. And I don't know that I haven't seen or heard a lot from Steve Christie, who is not used to really maybe working quite this hard. So I think that could be a jump ball for us. And that's saying something for Democrats in District 4. And looking to District 1, where I don't know if we might not be better off with Allie Miller still there, if given the potential Republican replacement that I've heard from. But for sure, Rex Scott is obviously a tremendous candidate. He's been running going like gangbusters. I mean, his finances have been amazing. He's been all over the place from a digital standpoint, outreach, and the numbers, again, coming in early vote wise, we can't make any assumptions, but there's a really impressive surplus of Democratic votes right now in District 1 that I'm hopeful that Rex and the Democrats will be able to maintain, so that we at least get a Democrat from District 1, if not District 1 and also District 4. So great question. And in terms of what they're going to be doing, we need to kind of figure out who they are, and then moving forward, hopefully a lot of the things I articulated about the priority on navigating the pandemic, making sure people have the resources they need in the job retraining and economically to take care of their families, and of course doing so in an environmental context that is respectful of our amazing Southern Arizona environment. Great question.
Just so you know, of course, I voted for all Democrats on the Board of Supervisors. So hopefully there's enough people out there like me that will give you a complete Democratic majority, unanimous majority. And with that, Susie Anderson has a question. Go ahead, Susie.
Thank you, Larry. And Dr. Heinz, my question is about, does the State Department of Health have any control over the County Department of Health? And two parts. Mr. Ducey has been very pro-mask, but he has done little else to help with the economic disaster that COVID has created for the state. So I just want to make sure that the county can do what it needs to do in spite of a Republican governor and up to now, what is a Republican legislature?
For sure, all good questions. So, and saying that you're pro-mask and wearing a mask sometimes in public, that's great. But if it's not being mandated statewide, then I'm sorry, that's a dereliction of your duty and you should be removed. If I did anything half as awful as that, ignoring a pandemic while my patients were dying, I mean, they had to get refrigerated produce trucks in Phoenix for some of the hospitals there. We heard that in Texas, Florida, I believe New York, tragically. Absolutely criminal. I'm sorry, that criminal level negligence. So, I could not do that. I would be in prison. Like, it wouldn't just be fines. I would not be able to practice medicine, and I would be in prison somewhere if I were doing that did that much damage to so many thousands of lives in Arizona. Forgive me for not knowing the exact number. It's over 5,000 people have lost their life in the state of Arizona right now. And I would say at least half of those absolutely did not have to if we had a governor and leadership at the state level that had actually supported us the way we needed to at the time that we needed it. Now, we rely, all 15 counties rely upon state shared revenue for a significant portion of the budget. So obviously we depend on that, and that is a direct that's directly related to economic activity, sales tax, whatnot. So as that That's going to go down. Property values have gone up, so that might offset some of it. But we're gonna, we do rely upon that for sure. In terms of the state health department having direct control over the county health departments, that is not my understanding. But remember that the governor is, every county government is considered a political subdivision of the state, which is why when the governor issued his emergency orders and said, I don't want any other government entities throughout this state to issue requirements for masks or to shut down restaurants and bars or to do any of those sensible things at the time when we needed it. He issued that as part of his emergency order, which was not only unhelpful, but the opposite, it was harmful, right? So it is true that the counties are, we do have to do what the governor and the state tells us. But I do want to say that, certainly on a legislative standpoint, I think we could be in for, come January, a Democratic House by 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 seats, and maybe, given the numbers we're seeing, a tied or Democratic Senate by, I'll just take 1 seat, which, of course, if that happens, that'd be the first time since I think the 1970s, if I'm not mistaken. So here's hoping.
Absolutely. We have a question from Barbara Warren. Barbara, please unmute yourself.
Hi, hi, Matt.
Hey, Barbara, how are you?
I'm okay, stuck at home. I have been working this summer with a group of people on a project that Raul Grajal was involved with already, and now Kamala Harris is in the Senate, and that is to develop a standard for heat protection for workers, especially outdoor workers, but all workers who would be exposed to in environments where they don't have cooling. We've had a hellishly hot summer here, as we all know, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to help us on the Board of Supervisors to help to develop a heat protection standard for workers in our communities in our county.
Yes, absolutely. That's excellent. I'm glad that you're doing that work, and I look forward to, if elected, I look forward to working with you and with the group and helping to establish that. And I think I think a lot of the other supervisors that are hopefully going to be elected will be very interested in doing that as well. So, yes.
Trish Muir, please unmute yourself. She is the chair of the Pima Area Labor Foundation. We'd love to hear from you.
I just wanted to ask you, Matt, really quickly. Pima County has, as you know, the Back to Business Task Force, and they had come up with a set of minimum safety and public health standards put in place. And you were talking a little bit about fines. In the first iterations of that, there were fines associated with those violations. The county came under pressure from business interests. Those fines, those sort of things were removed. There's now sort of a website wall of shame that a business can be placed on if they're not meeting those minimum safety standards. I wanted to ask you how you would respond or deal with those sort of pressures, because I know sometimes public safety and sometimes business interests aren't always on the same page.
Especially when we're dealing with this pandemic, we don't have vaccine for, we don't have curative therapy. Regeneron, we don't seem to have access to unless you're a senator or the president or a former governor. And the remdesivir, which I do sometimes use in my patients, is one study recently showed it may not work all that well in terms of reducing the length of the infection or the intensity of it. Although other studies previously have showed that it does. So there's a little bit of, we're not quite sure. Point being, you cannot mess around with this. This isn't like a particularly virulent strain of flu, but we still have the seasonal flu vaccine that kind of reduces that for the disease. But no, this is something that is about 5 times more likely to be fatal for folks as compared to influenza. This is a big deal. We're looking at a potentially very, very problematic winter coming here. Maybe not as much for us because of our seasons, but our weather here and global warming, weirdly, not good, but in this case, maybe perhaps slightly better for us. But still, a study out of the United Kingdom has showed that co-infection with influenza plus COVID doubles the mortality. So now you're at tenfold more likely, to die from this as compared to influenza. So those are situations where, yes, I want to be as business friendly as possible, but when it comes to endangering your patrons, you can't participate negligently in the slaughter of the people patronizing your business. That makes no sense. So we can't have that. And so I would weigh things, and just with that perspective, that is how I will weigh things.
All right. Thank you, Matt. We lost your video, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It looks like my iPad is trying to die, so I'm going to have to probably bounce in a second.
All right, we have a question from Betts. Over to you, Betts. Please unmute yourself and.
Yeah. Hi, Matt. I am wondering what your position would be about gun shows at the Pima County Fairgrounds. And I apologize if somebody already touched on this. I lost the meeting for about 5 minutes to take a phone call. And what your feeling is in general about gun shows.
Also good. So look, I think that we need to, I guess the question would be for me, what are these, like, okay, personal opinion, not the biggest fan of the gun shows, but I would say if these are to continue, then we have to be able to ensure that anybody attending, whether you're selling them, you're just showing them, you're buying them, whatever, that the folks that are attending have appropriate background checks, criminal background checks that have the, it's not that hard these days, frankly, to connect to the federal database and to do all the checks. It's just they prefer not to, because some of the folks that are purchasing these weapons don't have the proper clearances, right? So that would be part of any sort of approval process that I would participate in myself. So I could never get behind using public land in any way, county, state, federal, for any event that basically introduces weapons that can sometimes, fire, depending on what you're purchasing, they can fire. These weapons of destruction that it potentially could get into the hands of folks that have questionable background, that have, and I would say, we need to, I've said this for a while, there are many holes in even just the criminal background check. First of all, there isn't adequate criminal background checks, but enforcing at least what we have, but we need to make sure to look at folks that are having misdemeanor domestic violence offenses and others like that need this. We need to really broaden that quite a bit going forward too, which I know is not a county specific regulatory situation, but that would be how I would look at gun show specifically.
Okay, next up we have a question from Lucy Messing. Lucy, unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Matt.
Hi.
I want to ask you, what role do you think the Pima County Supervisors can have? What impact do you think they can have on public education?
Public education, hugely important, I think. And we've seen the push, or heard of and seen the push for more recently, focus on early childhood development, education, wellness, welfare, healthcare, all of that. And that is something that I'm personally hugely supportive of. I know that my friend and colleague, hopefully soon to be colleague, Adalita Grijalva, is similarly interested in this. I know Rex Scott, who is running in District 1, has made this a huge priority, especially given his background in the educational system. So I think that I would support looking at a minimum, piloting some kind of program where we can help to make sure that our 0 to 5-year-old population gets access to that early childhood education in combination with proper wellness and everything that they need, because those are the ages where if those young kids get access to the kind of the kind of healthcare and the kind of early childhood education that they need, that's going to set them up for pretty much being able to do anything they want going forward. And we've seen, unfortunately, the opposite, where those folks, if children don't get that kind of support at that very, very important ages, then they, things are delayed, and in some cases are not able to recover from that ever. So I would be open to having the county play a role. Now, the county is probably going to be working on like fewer funds because of the economic downturn induced by the pandemic. So I don't want to sit here and obligate all, hundreds of millions of dollars. We don't have that. But in terms of making the county a central player in bringing together other public and private, public-private partnership, bringing together other, like the city of Tucson, other municipalities and political subdivisions, especially working with, I think, the chamber, frankly, SALC and others that would really want to have this kind of collaborative effort moving forward and facilitating it in that way, so that the county is not on the hook for every single dollar, but we're bringing in a large coalition of stakeholders that together will be able to invest in this and move forward on that kind of an effort. And I look forward to being part of it.
Matt, I have a question for you. When you and I talked earlier about people coming into the hospital with COVID and that they would come in with a cough and wind up in the ICU, what is it like to be a doctor in a hospital these days? What are you experiencing?
It's definitely unexpected. And it's not unexpected to have occasionally patients suffering from a severe respiratory condition, a really bad pneumonia, or folks have a stroke or a bad heart attack. They require intubation and ventilation and ICU support. That happens on a fairly frequent basis from time to time. It's the volume of patients coming in and how sick they are, so many of them, and how rapidly they deteriorate, sometimes right in front of your eyes. You can be talking to somebody and then 15 minutes later they're calling a code blue and getting a tube, plastic straw jammed down their throat so that we can emergently begin to get them oxygen, and they stop breathing because of that second phase of the disease, that inflammatory phase that starts about day 7 or 8 of the symptoms. That can be frankly deadly, and it has been 226,000 times. So I would say it's the volume, and not right now. We're starting to pick up a bit. Maricopa's in a much worse shape right now. We've had a couple of months of fairly low COVID numbers here in Pima County in our hospitals, which has been a blessing. But I suspect we're going to continue to pick. I had one case last night, a couple cases the night before that. So they're definitely starting to pick up a bit. But I would just say that that the amazing team, the nurses, the case managers, the everybody, frankly, the other doctors and the critical care folks, it's just a little bit more like. And I haven't done this. I'm not a veteran myself, but it's just we're in the trenches. I think in a lot of ways that. In terms of the hours, wearing all of the it's like a medical burqa. I mean, wearing all the PPE, the 2 masks and the caps, and all of this stuff, and all these like, it's stifling. And I'm not complaining, because thank God we have the protective equipment to be able to more safely take care of these patients. But if you're ever visiting someone in a hospital, under that gown, under a couple of masks, under the cap, under with all that stuff on, even though the hospitals tend to be super cold, sorry about that, it's still like stifling, and people are just sweating buckets. And think about a nurse running around in ICU for 12 hours under all that stuff, right? So it's a very different working environment. And again, we're getting better at taking care of people with COVID, but we still don't have a curative therapy. We still don't have a vaccine to distribute. And even if we had a vaccine tomorrow, it would still be going to nurses, doctors, firefighters, police officers, frontline workers, your letter carrier. They're potentially seeing a lot of people, all the frontline folks, people that are higher risk, that are over the age of 60. And anyway, so we aren't going to have, probably for 6-8 months, we're not going to have a vaccine that gets distributed all over the place, right? So we're looking at pandemic circumstances until like August, September, maybe of 2021. Mask wearing, face shields, and social distancing, probably 12 months beyond that. So we're in this for kind of the long haul. And I don't know how many of these surge cycles that our amazing and dedicated healthcare workers are going to be able to take, just because they're going to get to the breaking point eventually too. I think we're not there yet, but that concerns me greatly. And so I can't say enough about the amazing colleagues I work with, and I'm really blessed to have so many great people there. It's just when we are in those peak times, when we have the ICUs filled to bursting, when people are coding in the hallways and we're having to intubate, going down the hall, that kind of stuff. It's and when you're doing that multiple times a day, we'll have to shut down visitors again, and you're going to have nurses and techs, and in some cases docs, being the last person that somebody dying of COVID will see or hear from, because it's an iPad, right, or a telephone, which is just wholly inadequate for the last moments or hours of your loved ones. It's just not where anyone wants to be. So it's difficult. It's frustrating. It is getting better from our perspective in terms of managing people. But again, none of this had to happen to this degree. And that is something that I know all of my colleagues we're always very, very keenly aware of the fact that so much of this, right, didn't have to happen. And what I think of, and what a lot of my colleagues think of, is when you see someone walking into a store and they refuse to wear a mask, I'm thinking, okay, are you going to be the next person we're intubating in 5 days, right? Like, I don't want that to happen. Yeah, you're a big jerk for not putting a mask on. Come on, man. It's not that hard. It's a piece of paper. It's simple. But like, I'm worried for that person, even though they're kind of being a jerk about not wearing a mask. I don't want them to die, right? And I don't want them to infect my mom or my dad, who I've incarcerated in Oro Valley. I won't let them fly home to Michigan, because it's not safe right now. So yeah, all of these things kind of go through our minds, and I've rambled on for like 10 minutes, so I'm sorry, but like that, there's a lot. And I think you probably get this kind of perspective from a lot of the folks you talk to who are in hospitals right now. But it's, again, it's getting better, but we don't want to go through any more of these surges. That's for sure. So, but thank you for that.
Well, Matt, speaking on behalf of all good Democrats in Tucson, we respect what you do in the hospital. We admire it, and we want to do everything we can to support you. And we're grateful for every life you can save. And with that, we're at the end of our meeting, and I wondered if you could sum up and tell people how they can find out about you and support you.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity, and it's been really great having this conversation. Really, really good, excellent questions, all of them. And you can reach me through probably the easiest way is my website, which is Heinz for Supervisor, all spelled out, .com. And that's again Heinz, HEINZ, supervisor.com. You can see all sorts of things there. And oh dear, sorry, this my video keeps going away because this iPad's about to die. So good timing. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing, everybody. I think Arizona's gonna go blue. We're going to go blue in a really big way, and maybe we'll bring Texas and Georgia and Florida and some other states with us on the while we're looking at things on November 3rd. So keep up the great work, and yeah, thank you to everyone.
Awesome, Matt. I just want to really quickly talk about the next meeting. On November 2, there will be no meeting. We hope everybody is out voting blue, and supporting Matt and all the other Democratic candidates. We will be back on November 9 when we have Joshua Polachek, the director of the Pima County Democratic Party. And with that, I want to thank you very much, Matt, and thank you for all the attendees for all the terrific questions you've asked in today's program. So best wishes, Matt, and we'll see you again after the election. Bye-bye now, everybody.